a little bit of a different video today. I'm going to talk to one of my buddies, and it's going to be someone who is actually just getting into jiu-jitsu. So whether you're someone who trains all the time and has been doing it for years, or if you're someone who's just now getting into jiu-jitsu, hopefully I can answer some of his questions about the sport, which will answer some of your questions about the sport. Let me know what questions you have down in the comments. I'll try to hit all the replies, but welcome to the show, Andrew Romano.
Hey buddy, how you doing?
Good, man. I'm doing very well. Can you hear the fan in the background? Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear your fan. Also, like my wall right here on the other side, they're putting in a sidewalk. So if you hear a cement mixer, that might also be a problem. So I'm not worried about a fan on your end. I'm worried about my sidewalk. How's things been since I saw you a few months ago? How's everything going?
Good, man. Good. Life is happening. It's been amazing. Been traveling. Working as a drummer, starting my own podcast, which everyone's been doing, but I'm glad that I get to do yours.
Well, the whole reason I brought you here was to confront you because it's been like 3 weeks since there's been a podcast release, and I'm like driving in the car every day hoping I check the podcast app, and there it is. And
kid's been traveling,
nothing.
Justin. Kid's been traveling.
Get on it, buddy.
I was in Chicago, Colorado, just having a great old time. Just doing, my favorite. I don't know when, but at some point I'll end up in Colorado.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude, come on. You an outdoorsy guy? No, you're in Philadelphia. No, you're not. You
to an extent. So we took the kids camping with my in-laws a month ago, whatever. And we had a cabin, and the cabin had a bathroom, communal shower block. You had to walk to the shower.
Okay.
Running water and electricity. And there's an air conditioner in the cabin. That's as rugged as I'm going. I don't want to forage for my food. I don't want to have to track something down and kill it to eat it. Gosh. I want to run down the street to the Wawa and get a hoagie and eat it by the campfire while the kids are fishing in the little man-made lake. Oh. That's as much as I got.
That sounds lovely, though. There's something to that, though. It's like teasing the wildlife.
Well, I mean, I like to hike. I love to be out in the woods and walking.
Mm-hmm.
I just draw the line at foraging. Once foraging comes into the equation, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Us actually. But one thing I did get to do this year. So I've done a lot this year. I've been lucky enough to, as an actor, I've got to do some great TV shows, some great commercials, do an off-Broadway play that might go to New York and stuff. But one thing that I really had on my list, and this is I think how I ended up here in front of you, is, and I'm so glad that I finally did it. It took way too long, and I have too many questions, and we're not gonna have enough time.
We will have plenty of time. We'll have plenty of time.
Is I finally got to enter the world of jiu-jitsu.
Well, so,
or as you guys say, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, us honkies, we say jiu-jitsu. So for people who don't know, I prefaced this in the intro where I basically said like a little bit of a weird thing today. We're just going to talk to my buddy who's starting jiu-jitsu, and usually because I have such pull and such celebrities in jiu-jitsu come on, I don't got to give them much of a background, but. For those who may not be familiar with your work, just give everyone a little bit of a background about all the things I already know about why it's sort of embarrassing it's taken you so long to get to jiu-jitsu. Just give a quick rundown for those of the people watching and listening who aren't your buddy, who maybe haven't seen you before and don't know about your podcast.
My name's Andrew. I have a podcast called the ACA Podcast where I explore the underpinnings of creativity with my co-host Mike Hansen. I'm an actor. I come from an acting background, TV shows, movies, commercials, a lot of seltzer commercials. Most seltzer commercials you see on the internet are probably me, unfortunately. But other than that, one thing I am very proud of in my life is I'm Brazilian, and been Brazilian since the beginning. And one part of my culture that I've always wanted to lean into is the mixed martial arts part of it. Because how many Brazilian champions are we going to have before we join hands across the world there, Justin? Brazilians seem to do, well for that. And I've done Muay Thai for a long time. I did that for about 6 years. And I've always been intimidated. And a lot of my family members in Brazil do jiu-jitsu, almost all of them. In fact, all the guys pretty much have some sort of experience with it. And I finally bit the bullet, and I don't know what, I think it's because it's got to be something maybe because a part of me the reason I became an actor is I maybe rejected the typical routes of everything. So maybe I kind of went against the grain by saying, I'm going to choose a striking martial art instead of grappling. And it's built up this distance between it that I was so intimidated to walk into a gym, but I finally did. And I got to say, I wish I would have done it sooner.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common sentiment from people who start training jiu-jitsu. I think
Mm-hmm.
when people start training jiu-jitsu, they either love jiu-jitsu or they're like immediately like, all right, this is not for me. Like I'm just not into this. And the people who are on the like, I really like it, I want to keep doing it, always have that. I mean, I had that. Why did I not do this like 10 years ago? I'm sure that a big catalyst for you starting jiu-jitsu now was when you convinced me to heel hook that statue in Amsterdam. So I'm sure that that played a big part into,
You know
pushing in
what?
the right
I think
direction.
in a weird way, yeah, watching you put this like old colonial statue in a heel hook was like a highlight for me because I was like, because there was a level. Okay, obviously you've been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, and I've been around it. And you can recognize good jiu-jitsu when you see it, even if you know nothing about it. Um, and the way you as silly as it was that you wrapped around this statue, it just reminded me of like, oh yeah, Andrew, you still have to confront that. Do you want to do that? Do you have to do that? And yeah, so if you don't mind me asking, what was your experience walking into a gym like for the first time? Because I'm going to share what mine was. I went to 3 different gyms, and
Okay. I said in the beginning, I thought that maybe you had been to one or two. I thought that maybe you had one or two classes under your belt. So
I've got 3 now.
we'll get okay. We'll get further down the line. But back to your question.
What was walking in day one like? Why did you go too? Then tell me what happened.
So I started training jiu-jitsu because in 2007 I watched a UFC fight, Rampage Jackson versus Chuck Liddell, with my cousin who was just like, "Hey, let's go out tonight for a Saturday night. There's a UFC fight on at the bar. We can like go watch that." And I did, and I was like, "This is really cool. I really like this. This is something I want to like watch and whatever." And I did, and I got into just watching the UFC and into the sport. And then I kind of had a realization where I was like, I'd rather play hockey than watch a hockey game. You know what I mean? I'd rather do a sport than watch it. So maybe that would be the same thing with MMA. Let me try a jiu-jitsu class. So I went in and I tried a jiu-jitsu class and I was like, all right, this is a lot of fun and I think I could be good at it. And then now it's like 14 years later and I'm still
Gotcha.
trying to be good at it and still
Yeah.
enjoying it. So a pretty normal reason for people to start jiu-jitsu is they watch the UFC and they like it, or Joe Rogan told them on his podcast that they would like it. And
Joe Rogan told them.
I
Yeah.
like to not think I wasn't so typical where I was like, oh, UFC, go right to.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's pretty much my story.
One of the instructors, he goes, um, what made you want to take jujitsu? And before I even said it, he said, did Joe Rogan tell you to take jujitsu? And I was like, no, okay. But I do listen to Joe Rogan sometimes. So one thing I noticed about walking in first day to these different gyms is obviously immediately off the bat, there's a different culture shift between every gym. I knew that from before, but going into something where part of me is like, I kind of want a Brazilian instructor because of the Portuguese element of it. But I guess in the
You want a little bit of a leg up because you want to have that inside. I speak Portuguese and the rest of you fools don't, and I can talk to this guy in
absolutely,
Portuguese. Yeah.
absolutely. I think I can tap into the spirit of Gracie if I think hard enough, because of Brazilian, But anyway, um, my question for you is in the beginning, does it really matter culture or like instruction? Because the big differentiating factor is I went to a local place that wasn't a big franchise. I went to, without saying
The
it,
franchise.
the franchise. And then I went to a smaller regional kind of franchise place, and the instruction varied significantly. But in the beginning, does it really matter?
So, from an instruction standpoint, it does to an extent. From a
Okay.
culture standpoint, I think that matters more than the instruction part. So, like when you're first starting, if someone's teaching you the technique and they're doing a bad job of teaching you the technique, it might put you off jiu-jitsu in general because you're going to learn this thing and then when you try to apply it, it doesn't work and you're going to be like, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not meant for like, so that can work against you. But there is so much when you're a white belt starting out that like you don't know that you don't know. So the guy might be teaching you technique and not doing a great job, but for you it looks like magic and it works and you think it's great. So like that's part of why I say the culture side is more important, because if you don't like going there, you're not going to go there. Like if you don't like hanging out with the people that are going to be there on the mat with you, why would you go? Why would you make the choice of like, oh, I could stay home and hang out and read a book, or I can, go get beat up.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to go get beat up by people I don't like.
Exactly.
So I think as much as like it's like hokey or whatever, the vibe is important. The vibe's got to be the vibe. And a lot of things with culture in different schools is, some schools will be very like militant, very traditional, very face the wall when you tie your belt or we're going to yell at you. Like you have to ask permission to get onto the mat. You have to, when you get on the mat, you should walk right over to whoever's teaching and shake their hand, like a beeline to them and shake their hand, and don't get a water drink and unless they say you can. Like all these very like traditional things. And there's schools that are super lax, that it's just like, hey guys, we're here to train, maybe don't talk when the instructor's teaching the technique, but like it's not school. It's a jiu-jitsu school, like let's have fun. And the trade-off sometimes is the militant places will have really hard sparring, which is, I think, what is good. It should be hard sparring, you should train really hard, and you should really push each other. The lax culture schools tend to be a little, we'll say, softer.
Gotcha.
You got to find that balance between like, I enjoy the teaching style. It's the appropriate level of rigidity and structure for me, but also we're not just like not really training hard. I like the school I train at now, I walk in and I'm happy to be there, see the people, and it's a fun environment on the mat. But when it's time to roll, like we're throwing down, we're going hard, and you got to find that balance in the culture.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess going back to what you said, you don't know what you don't know, because looking at the instruction, just at the instructors that I was with, there's a varying degree in the level of commitment where someone would show a technique in one of the gyms and then you just kind of off to your own. And it's just like, oh yeah, pair up with a higher belt. Where another gentleman was very much involved and you could tell, just like how you can tell someone who's doing good jujitsu between bad jujitsu, you can tell a good teacher from a bad teacher, or maybe just an inexperienced teacher. And I guess in the beginning, I was just curious. I was like, out of these three gyms, price points are all very similar. Where do you don't know. So that's why I was wondering, which way do I point this ship? Because I guess in the beginning, as long as you're starting out, as long as you're starting, does it really matter? But you bring up a great point, because you don't want to learn something incorrectly. And the culture is an interesting thing too. Because in the beginning as a white belt, I mean, you're just trying to soak up as much as possible. So I feel like the rigidity of having a traditional place would work in your favor, because being too playful in the beginning could ingrain bad habits. And I also don't know when to not be, but then I remember in sparring in Muay Thai, being playful was, I mean, if you can get to that level, that's where some real breakthroughs can happen. So in the beginning, I mean, does it make sense for someone like myself to be at a cultural place where, as long as it makes sense for me, because I think I would just want to get good as quick as possible.
Right.
So,
I think that, so much in life and in all things, but we speak in generalities, you know what I mean? And
sure,
it's a big skill to know what kind of learner are you? What kind of technique in teaching has worked for you in the past? In all of the things that you have done, what sort of structure has worked for you? And you have to sort of fit yourself to that, I think, not the other way around. And what works for me might not work for you, and vice versa. I think for me, a place where it's very, very structured is going to be one of the three places you went to. I am assuming will operate in this way, because I know that they do, where no one talks. We're drilling, no one's talking. The only person who's going to show you how to do the technique is the person who was teaching that class. If you have a question, you put your hand up, they come over and they help you, okay? When I'm training last night, If I have a question on something, I'm training with someone who will workshop it together, and that's not frowned upon. That works for me. And as you put more and more time in, and you're on the mat more, and you learn technique A today, and then in sparring you're trying technique A, and it's not quite right. So the next time you go to class, you're learning technique B. When you're learning technique B, you might ask your training partner, hey, this is kind of related to technique A, and this is the problem I had with technique A. Can we look at that for a second in addition to working technique B? That works for me.
Yeah.
For some people, you might need that exact compartmentalization of it's now the next day. We don't talk about technique A until you're either in a private or you're doing sparring. Like, we're only on technique B. That might work for some people's brains in the way that they input knowledge and how they soak it all in. So if that works for you, that's great. Go that way.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work for me. And I'd much rather be in a place where I'm not worried about asking someone who isn't the guy running this class about something. You know what I mean?
I know what you're talking about, and it brings up another inquiry I had, which was about etiquette as a white belt. And it's only because I have a little bit of experience with a contact sport. Is that you want, as a white belt, it's very difficult because you don't want to get in the way of other people who are trying to get good work in. So if I want to drill technique A, and it's still, I mean, I can't seem to figure it out. It's like, I don't want to take up a purple belt's who it's his second class. He went to the morning class. Now he's doing the afternoon class. I don't want to get in his way. So is there any advice that you would have for a white belt to maybe orient themselves in that kind of a situation?
I have two parts to that answer.
Yeah.
The first part is going back to sort of the culture thing.
Yeah.
If it's a purple belt who's at a class that white belts are in, right? Like it's clearly a fundamentals class, it's a beginner's class. You should not feel like you're taking time away from that purple belt or inconveniencing that purple belt. That purple belt should understand the setting they are in. I'm at a white belt class, I'm at a fundamentals class. If someone asks me for help, they should be happy to help you. That should be a big culture thing where the higher belts should be eager to help the lower belts, because that's how lower belts become higher belts, and that should be a welcoming thing. Mm-hmm. If you're at a competition class and you've been invited to come train at the competition class, that's not the time. Let the purple belts work. And also, if a purple belt says to you, I got to focus on something else right now, I'll help you when I can, that happens too. So the culture thing, you should feel more welcome by the upper belts than maybe you have been. I don't know if you have felt unwelcome, but you should not feel unwelcome. What was the other part of your question? Oh, etiquette.
Yeah.
So the etiquette, I think with etiquette is the best thing to do is just observe what other people are doing. Mm-hmm. And there's some standard etiquette things that a lot of schools will follow. So things that you can look out for are bowing when you get on or off the mat. When people are fixing their gis, are they facing the wall or are they just kind of tying their belt and good to go? When people go on the mat, are they approaching the instructor right away to say hello to them? Are they saying hello to each other student as they walk on and shaking hands? Mm-hmm. When you guys are sparring, are people walking off to get a drink without being told like it's a break time? When you're drilling, are people, walking off to go to the bathroom on their own, or are they saying, hey, is it cool if I step off? These are some common etiquette things that you can look out for and just do what the other people are doing. The easiest way to safeguard yourself from like a faux pas in jiu-jitsu is just follow and mirror what you're seeing happening around you.
Follow the crowd. I will say, and this pains me to say a little bit too, is that all that etiquette that you just talked about, the first time seeing it, I was like, oh wow, there is a ceremonial traditional way of doing this. Everyone half-assed it at every single gym.
Yeah.
No one really looks each other in the eye and like greets
Right.
them. No one's
Right.
really, the bows might have just looked like them gearing up to get on. I mean, it just looks like everyone's just half-assing it.
Yeah.
I was like, if Henzo was here,
Yeah. Right.
But
there's the etiquette of like, oh, it's the end of class. Let's all line up and bow to a picture of Elio Gracie on the wall.
me laugh. Sorry.
I don't.
I was like,
I don't understand how
oh.
we need to do that. We're getting a little cultish.
The
Like,
Brazilian in me is like, I'll do it, but I'm like, first of all, who is that guy? It's like, what is going on here?
right, right.
Yeah.
So the things that I always do, whether or not it's the culture at the gym I'm at,
Yeah.
whether I've seen other people do it or not, is when I go on the mat, I don't ever really bow to get on the mat. I just
I don't think
go
you
on the mat.
need to. I mean, it's weird, but I get
I'll
it.
go up to the black belts who are on the mat and say, hey, I'll shake their hand, especially if they're teaching, because like, thanks for teaching the class,
Sure.
shake their hands. And like at the school I'm at now, everyone just says hello to everyone. I'll go to the black belt first and say hey, and then I just walk the mat and say hey to everyone, because like we're all here to be buddies and hang out. So like it'd be weird to do any other sport where you go to it and don't say hi to the other people like on your team.
That would be
I do
weird.
that.
Yeah.
And the one traditional thing that I do, and I don't know why I do it, I just like it, is if during drilling, if I have to get off the mat for something, I say like, hey, I'm just gonna step off real quick. I don't know why I do it. I just don't. I feel weird if like the instructor's getting ready to teach and I'm like in the bathroom.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That
So
makes sense.
I'll just say like, hey, I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. I'm gonna get a drink real quick. So that way, maybe if they were gonna use me as part of the instruction, or they know that me and another student might be off, they might wait to like continue their lesson for a second. But I mean, nobody else does that. I understand that's a weird thing to do, but
I don't think it's weird. I mean, you just gave me this kind of parallel thought, and I'm gonna kind of relate it really quick to acting. A lot of actors will do something to ground them before they get into a scene. If I'm in a scene where I have to, or this happened recently, I had to have a gun shoved down my mouth in downtown Atlanta, right? Like
yeah, that was a fun part of that one podcast when you guys were talking about it. So people
like
put
that
some more
was
podcasts out, maybe, just push publish. I don't know what I got to do to get the publish out here.
we'll hear about it soon enough, Justin. But like there's a grounding element to the craft. Something that really puts you in it, that once you do that, it grounds you to the mental place where you're going to go for the scene. And when they call action, there's typically something I like to do, or actors like to do, where it just grounds and puts us into the circumstances. And I think that's what maybe bowing before the mat should be. But I just see people overlook it, and maybe it's something easy to overlook, and you've been training for so long and you don't really necessarily need to do, but it's the switch. It's flipping on the switch between I'm a human out here who has, all their issues, but then the bowing simulates that I'm going to leave it all out there and come onto the mat and be ready to train and be present, engaged, focused. It's just I like the parallel of that, and
I could totally get that, because for me, I don't think that way at all. For me, it's I'm on or I'm off the mat. It is what it is. Once the bell goes and we're rolling, I'm only focused on that. But I could totally get that. And I'll never fault someone for doing one of these etiquette things, because like I said, I do a weird etiquette thing that no one else does. So if that makes you sort of like in the moment, it pulls you into what you're about to do, and it's a good switch flip from the stress of the outside world is done because now I'm on the mat and I'm going to train. Cool. Do it. You know what I mean? Like, do the things that you like, do the things that make it easier for you.
You know who I bet takes the bow seriously? Yuri. That's a guy who takes the bow seriously.
Yeah, that's a bower. You know what? I think I just stumbled on a new segment for this show where I'm going to just pull up random pictures of fighters and just comment whether I think that they're a bower or not a bower.
Yeah,
I think this could be fun.
Rampage Jackson does not take it seriously.
That's not a bower. That's
not a bower. He's not about it.
And maybe we can get like categories of like surprise bower, like I think that they do, or I've seen them do it, but they, you wouldn't think so, or maybe
like Stipe Miocic, firefighter, didn't think you'd be a bower.
Maybe he's a half bower. Maybe he's a half bower.
Those are called lower back problems. No, but Justin, so another thing I wanted to, and let me know if I'm asking too many questions. We got too much.
The whole point of this is to ask these questions that I'm sure other people are going to have. So like, fire away.
Because I really don't want to talk to my cousins about it. But they did mention to me, they're being kind of jerks about it. They were mentioning how wipeouts are the reasons why most people get hurt.
Yes.
And because I knew that going into every roll session, that's why I kind of had this. I don't want to get in the way of a purple belt or a brown belt, or dare I even roll with a black belt. I'll sacrifice the blue belt.
Right.
So I mean, talk to me first, is that true in your experience? And how is somebody who's kind of weary of hurting someone, like I don't want to like
Yeah.
lean a certain way and hurt them and get it, but how would you advise?
The answer to your question is yes. I think you're more likely to get injured when rolling with a white belt than with a black belt. And the reason is most white belts, jiu-jitsu is a very counterintuitive thing. A lot of the way you move, the way you control your body is counterintuitive. And you're put into very weird positions where otherwise in your life you don't have someone like sitting on your chest trying to choke you. Like, these are unusual positions. So a lot of white belts, in learning how they control their body in these motions and in getting comfortable in these uncomfortable positions. Did you hear the truck go by?
No.
Okay. I'll cut that out. The stupid truck went by. They spaz. You hear all the time about like spazzy white belts, and some people don't lose that spazziness until purple belt. It's just wild movements, or I don't like this. Let me try to move very quickly or be very strong. And, this is sort of how like injuries can happen. One of the big things in jiu-jitsu is you're always keeping your elbows in tight and not letting your arms float. And you start to get a lot of this like side to side white belt movement of like, and knees go flying. It's just a matter of not knowing how your body moves in weird positions that you've probably never been in before in your life. Now, for you, you're an athletic person. You've trained in a combat sport before, and you're aware that you don't want to hurt people. Like, accidents will happen in training all the time. Like, the only time I've ever gotten a serious injury in jiu-jitsu was like a freak accident that wasn't even like a real common thing. It was just I moved in one weird way and my knee went one weird way, and it happens. So accidents will happen no matter how long you train jiu-jitsu. But I think because you're aware that you don't want to hurt someone, and you're aware of why those things might happen, an accident could happen, but I think you're at I don't think you should worry too much about like, oh, I hope I don't hurt someone this one, or I hope I don't hurt someone this time.
Yeah.
If accidents happen, but those are sort of the reasons why those spazzy white belt injuries pop up. And a black belt is going to be more controlled in their movement and understand how not only is my body supposed to work, but they understand how obviously their own body is supposed to work. So when they're trying technique with me, there's no danger in I hurt myself like on their black belt body. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
yeah.
There's just more of an understanding. There's just more of a body awareness.
Absolutely. I mean, I had with the first class I took, I got paired with a purple belt guy, and it was his second class of the day. And he was just trying to show me a technique in side control, just moving around the head. And when it was my turn, it was something like I was just repositioning myself, and he goes, "Ow!" And he kind of like, and I was like, wow, did I just tap a purple belt? And he goes, something about got pinched or something. And I was like, I immediately got in my head. I was like, of course, first class, here I go. I'm injuring a purple belt. I was like, God. He's like, no, you're fine. You're fine. I was like, are you sure? And after that, I mean, I was just like, I'm going to sacrifice the blue belts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens, especially like, I don't know if you've done gi classes or no gi classes or both, but
just gi. Yeah.
Okay. Especially with the gi, when you're grabbing grips, it's really hard to grab part of a gi pants and not grab the skin right next to it. It's really hard to like grab a sleeve and not grab a part of the person's skin. It's really hard to like punch in a lapel grip and not maybe pinch their neck and their skin. Like, again, these things just happen. You know what I mean? We're doing a sport where my goal is to grab and strangle you. Sometimes grabbing and strangling you makes like something not feel great on your body. Like, it comes along with the territory.
God, I can't believe I'm in the 21st century and I'm sitting here asking you questions on how to politely strangle people.
Dude, it's the weirdest thing about jiu-jitsu. It's like, you're training and you're trying to like do techniques that if the person didn't tap, you would maim them. Like, an armbar just ruins someone's 6 months if you don't let go. And like, there'll be times where, you get done training and someone will hit you with something and you're like, man, it would have hurt even more had you done, X, Y, Z. And it's like, not only are we trying to hurt each other, I'm trying to help you better hurt me so
Mm-hmm.
I can get better at defending, you getting better at trying to hurt me. So yeah, real weird sport. You got to be real weird to like jiu-jitsu, present company included. All right, so just a quick break, because if you're following me on social media, which you should be at Justin Lesko on Instagram, you know how much I love the sauna that I recently got. And on top of all the studies showing a decreased risk in all-cause mortality and the health benefits and how it can maybe prevent Alzheimer's, I just think it feels really good and I really like it, so I want you to like it too. I have noticed it helps my jiu-jitsu, it helps my overall fitness, and it makes me feel good after hard training. If you've ever Googled having a sauna at your house, you know that they are super expensive, like $5,000, $6,000, $10,000, and I don't have that to spend. I'm sure that you don't have that to spend on a sauna as well. If you want to get a sauna and you don't want to spend a ton of money, go to sweattent.com and use the code Justin to get $100 off at the checkout. Sweattent is a fraction of the cost of a normal at-home sauna, and it's incredible. It's a small tent that pops up to this huge space. It gets super hot, so you get all the benefits of the sauna without spending 10 grand on one. So check it out. And now Andrew's on hold, so I'm going to go back to him and let's continue our conversation.
What would you recommend for a wipeout whose goal is just to get to blue? Is it to just show up as often as possible, only do fundamentals, or would it behoove us to do fundamentals and then go to the Saturday roll class and just get a blue, just try to pick up anything? Because at this point, you're picking up by association, just being around it, right? It's a numbers game kind of a thing. So for someone like me who just wants to get to blue, because then I feel like I can then begin the journey to start to find my game, you know? So how would you advise on that?
First thing, I would not use blue belt as a target,
Gotcha.
because so many people have the mentality of like, I just don't want to be a white belt anymore. I just want to get to blue belt. And then they get to blue belt and it's a letdown. Like the blue belt blues is a big meme in jiu-jitsu because it's real. Like there's like a very old, not funny joke about jiu-jitsu about how do you get someone to quit jiu-jitsu? You give them their blue belt, because so many people quit at blue belt. Because what happens is you approach it like a goal, and that goal turns into a finish line, and then you're like, oh, okay, I got my blue belt, I'm done. And when you get your blue belt, you don't go from magically being like a 4-stripe white belt to being a blue belt and now you're crushing every white belt. So you get a blue belt, and the first day you train with your blue belt, like a 3-stripe white belt taps you and you're just like, blah, defeated. Like, I'm a blue belt,
Yeah.
why am I getting... So I would, if you can manage to have the goal of, my goal is to, my next short-term goal is to get my blue belt and not let that be a finish line. That's a good goal, but try to avoid approaching it like I'm running a race to blue belt and then when I'm at blue belt, whatever. But I would say be on the mat as much as possible, whether that's drilling class, whether that's rolling. I personally think you get more out of live sparring than you do out of drilling, just because there's so many branches on the tree of, if I'm in this position and they do this and then I do this and then they do this, you can just go on ad infinitum about all the different things that happen. And you can't see all that in drilling. So you might drill for 45 minutes, 3 techniques, and as soon as the person does one thing different than what you were drilling, you don't know what to do now. But like you said, you absorb so much through rolling and through absorption. More time on the mat is better. I think that watching as much jiu-jitsu as possible is great too, because it lets you see things from the outside. I think the best advice I would give someone who's just getting started and wants to get better would be spend as much time on the mat as fits your schedule and works with your body, where you don't feel like you're dead every day. But roll as much as you can. Just get beat up as much as you can and make peace with the fact that even if someone has 6 months more experience than you, that's a big amount of time in jiu-jitsu. So you're going to get smashed. It is what it is.
So at the one of the gyms, I won't say, that doesn't matter which one it is. I was there and I was rolling with somebody who was clearly more experienced, and I immediately, something I didn't even think about, but it's worth talking about, is hygiene. Um, is that a thing that people think about, or is it the silent elephant in the room that people are like, that guy needs to wash his gi because he never does? Is that a thing ever?
So this brings me very nicely to some things you should look out for at gyms. Some things that should be a red flag of maybe this isn't quite the spot for me. If there are people with bad hygiene more than one time, that's a red flag. If you're at a school where there's the smelly guy with the bad gi, that's the instructors and owners of that school doing a bad job and not telling that dude like, hey man, you're going to give us all staff, you got to wash your shit. So that's like a problem from the top down. You should avoid that. Speaking of gis, if they force you to buy their own gi and you can only wear their gi, you can only wear their rash guard, you can only wear their shorts, and they're like super expensive and you get them and they're not super great quality, like that's not a good sign. We talked about if you don't like the people, that's obviously, not a good sign. You said price point is pretty much the same for, all the places you've been. So that's always something to consider. It is your money. You're spending your money. You want to spend it. You want to get the service that you are willing to spend for it. If you go to a school and you notice that there's not a good mix of ages, races, and genders, that can be a bit of a red flag. Diversity is good on a jiu-jitsu mat. You don't want to always be the guy who is there training with nothing but the competition killers. You want to be able to roll with the 45-year-old dad who just is there for a workout sometimes, and diversity is a good thing. But these are just some things that you should look out for that kind of sparked when you said about the gi, because it should not happen. If someone has a smelly gi and a smelly rash guard, someone at the top should be nipping that in the bud.
It's so funny that you added this to the segment of red flags, because at that same gym, when it comes to that conversation, which I dread, by the way, if you're the person that has to sell the gym membership, just know that the person typically when they're done rolling just knows that they're going to be like, there's going to be a sales call after this.
Yeah.
They were trying to get me to buy the gi.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you have to, but we strongly urge that you purchase our gi for a great price of $189.99. And you're like,
that same gi you can get on Amazon for like $60. And I'll send you, I use Epic Roll stuff. I'll send you the link to that. I'll put in the link below for all you people watching. You can check it out too. Epic Roll BJJ. They have good stuff that's like affordable, and it doesn't have like flames and dragons on it, which is, kind of a buzzkill for me. But yeah, like there's schools that are like, we have a uniform policy. We want everyone to look the same, and that's fine. There's schools where it's like, hey, today's we're rolling in the black gis today, rolling in white gis today.
Yeah.
Definitely don't wear a gi of like a competitor. Don't wear school A's gi to school B and think that's going to be cool. But if you're showing up in a plain gi that you've bought for yourself, like, you shouldn't be like kicked off the mat for that. That's something that should be like, maybe not by itself a reason not to train there. If you love everything else about the school and you want to just suck it up and spend $200 on a gi, like, sure,
that's not a make or break, right?
It shouldn't be a make or break, but it should be enough to put you on your guard that maybe there's like some other things. Like if the school's charging you for promotions, like, hey, we think you're close to your blue belt. We want you to take the blue belt test. It costs $200, and if you don't pass, you don't get that back. Some people don't have a problem with that. My problem with that is that I would always wonder, did I actually earn my blue belt, or they just wanted $200? You know what I'm saying? Like
100%.
And there's some sales tactics that I know of in the jiu-jitsu world where, maybe you've been training for 6-8 months and your attendance has dipped a little bit, and they think that maybe you're close to like quitting or being done. Well, why don't we give him his blue belt, and then he'll be committed and he'll stay in. So we'll tell him he's close to his blue belt. We'll tell him he's got to pay the $200 for the blue belt test. If he quits, at least we got an extra $200 out of him. If he doesn't quit, great, I got him to stay and got $200 out of him. So like, some of the places that won't let you train there if you don't buy their gi are the same places that would run through some of those other, I don't want to say shady, we'll just call them practices.
Or we can call it a racket, you know.
Yeah.
The
Cash
Italian in me
grab.
is like, we'll call it a racket.
Cash
I
grab.
love a good racket. But so in the beginning it sounds like as much time as possible. It's a numbers game. Get in there if you can, for as long as you can. Rolling, or just I guess sparring would be the move in the beginning. You know, just I guess I'm a little because you know you really don't know what you're doing, but by association, I'll feel it out. But is there what do you do outside of jujitsu that helps your game? Is it yoga? Is it functional workouts? A lot of dynamic workouts? Do you lift?
I'm a weirdo and I
Me with
really
that.
like fitness. So for me, like it's fun to do strength training. It's fun to run. It's fun to ride my bike. It's fun to stretch every night when I'm watching TV and foam roll and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Strength training is the best thing you can do because, I mean, we can go real tangent about all of the health benefits of strength training and longevity and not falling down and dying when you're old and the
Yeah.
correlation between muscle mass and decreases in all cause mortality and all that. Strength training is great for your jiu-jitsu. I think running, as you know from someone coming from Muay Thai and striking, there's no better cardio base than running, and the more cardio you have, the longer you can roll. The more you can roll, the more you can learn. The more you can learn, the better you get. So if you can improve your cardio, I always would say, like for me, jiu-jitsu is my main sport. Jiu-jitsu is the primary thing that I do. I strength train and run as much as I possibly can before it diminishes my ability to train jiu-jitsu. So if
Mm.
I like for me, I know the sweet spot is I can strength train 3 times a week and I can run 2 to 3 times a week, and I don't show up to jujitsu so fatigued that I can't really train. If I push it too much more than that, then my rounds aren't as good, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I would always tell people if you can strength train and you can run, great, but don't get to the point of diminished returns where it kind of backfires on you. And you have an athletic job, you move around a lot, you're going to
Sure.
be like slightly in a leg up in that category already because you're coming in already sort of athletic.
Mm.
You're not unaware of how your body moves, so that gives you a little bit of a leg up. But if you notice you're getting tired a lot and you can only roll so many rounds in a row, the jiu-jitsu cardio will come just by doing jiu-jitsu, but it will come faster if you can put some feet to pavement a couple times a week.
My entire focus is just to get good. I'm changing it. It's not to become a blue belt, but it brings me back to what I think is an important concept that is uh, misconstrued even at gyms. Because one of the gyms I went to, um, where I was a big fan of the instruction, he had to lecture the class on basically something that we touched on, which is the belts. So in your view, how should people view the belts? They shouldn't view it as a goal, which I see what you're saying because it could even be preyed upon as a potential marketing, racket. But how should yeah? So how should I view it? Because you look at the blue belts and the purple belts and the brown belts, and it just from this beginning even stepping on the mat in this journey, you're like you think to yourself, wow, man, how would I love to get there? And so you immediately set your North Star, but you shouldn't be thinking about a color of a belt that you wrap around yourself before you put on class. What, how should I view the belt system? And then from there, how did you approach it? Is it just show up and get better every day? It's a kind of a two-parter, but stick on number one really quick because I kind of want to flesh that out because I don't know how to think about it now.
Like you don't know how to think about it in the terms of like how you approach training with someone at each belt or how you approach like what each belt means.
What does each belt, yeah, what does each belt mean? I mean, is it just how long I've been doing this or how many techniques I've mastered or how I found one person told me at one of the gyms, you find your game,
Yes.
which was vague and obscure, but in a weird way, I understood it completely.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the this is not my analogy. Someone else came up with this and I don't know who it was, so I can't give them proper credit. But it's like at white belt, you've set out to learn a new language and you're learning some letters. At blue belt, you know what words are. You can read some words. At purple belt, you're putting sentences together. At brown belt, you can write paragraphs and chapters. And at black belt, you're putting out novels. So the way you can approach looking at the belts is the belts are a great indicator of time spent on the mat, ability, and there's what's hard about belts is that there are belts for people who you might be training with a purple belt who is a fantastic competitor, trashes everyone, beats everyone left and right, is just like unbeatable, so good. But what they know is more limited. They have their A game and maybe their B game, and they use that, and they're so good at those things, no one can beat them. But then there also might be purple belts who never compete, or if they do compete, they don't do well in competition, but they can tell you A, B, C, D, E, F, G what to do in any position. They know an immense amount of things. And then there's purple belts who are kind of a mix of both. So it can be hard to say like, oh, that guy's a purple belt, I bet he's going to thrash me. Maybe that's a guy who's a purple belt who's not very athletic and, trains jiu-jitsu as a hobby, doesn't take it super serious, but his knowledge is so deep that he's a purple belt. Mm-hmm. So when you're navigating the waters of like, what does each belt mean, it can be tricky. And because there's no real set standard, like there's supposed to be, but there really isn't, there's plenty of people who, I try to say this like not like arrogantly about like my school, but there's people that come in and they have they're a purple belt, and I watch them roll with our white belts, and our white belts are giving it to them because the school that they're at promotes very liberally. I've been a brown belt for 5 or 6 years. I've been a brown belt for a long time, longer than most people spend at brown belt, because the school that I'm at takes the promotion from brown belt to black belt very seriously. Other schools might say, oh, Justin, you've been a brown belt for like 5 years. You've been training with me for a couple months. Here's your black belt. So it can be very muddy waters to sort of navigate. I think for a person who's just going in as a white belt and just getting started, you should look at the belts as like blue belt is going to be really good. Purple belt is going to be even better than that. Brown belt is going to be amazing. And if I get to roll with a black belt, my world's going to be shattered. So like you can look at it at those levels, because for right now, for you, when you're training, you're going to get so much benefit from everyone you train with. The belt almost doesn't matter outside of you can kind of gauge how long they've been doing it and how good they are. What you shouldn't do is you shouldn't go into the role of like, all right, I'm rolling with a brown belt. Like, this is going to be nothing for me because he's just going to demolish me. Like, don't let it intimidate you to the fact that like, oh, I'm not going to get anything out of it. Oh, I'm taking time away from them. Oh, I'm inconveniencing them. Like we talked about a little bit ago, they should want to roll with you, and they should want you to get better, and they should want to help you. So as much as it can be like sort of murky waters, it shouldn't play on your mind too much. It should be something that you're aware of how good these people are and how these rankings work, but you shouldn't have to spend too much time like breaking it down and trying to figure out who's who and why, and why they're those ranks.
Gotcha. That makes me feel better because I'm well aware of I guess I was about to say I'm well aware of people's time, which is a polite way of saying that I'm probably too nice sometimes in new environments, especially when it comes to choking people. So I need to be
right. It's like a weird new environment. It's a try to murder each other
weird new
environment.
And so this entire conversation has been incredibly helpful because it's given me the confidence to just kind of jump in there, and which I've been wanting to do. I just it just feels I feel like I've had a lot more clarity, and I can jump in now not feeling bad about it. That being said, I'd like to know, you said you've been at brown belt for 5 years, and as somebody who's about to start their entire journey would love to be at just anywhere to master, like not even master, just to learn a technique at this point. Where are you at in your game at 5 years into brown belt? Like where are you, what are you focused on, and I guess how do you feel about the game?
So for me, so the school that I'm at now, right, What I love about this school is that my instructor, here's the thing you should be on the guard for. Your instructor should have an instructor, and your instructor should be constantly continuing their education in the sport. They shouldn't just like be flying solo, and no matter how good they are, they shouldn't be done learning. My instructor is constantly learning, bringing in new things, and because I'm a high-ranking student, a lot of the things that he brings in, it's sort of collaborative. We look at it and work through, what do we think about this? What do we think about that? Let's play with this position a little bit. Let's explore and experiment. And I'm constantly taking in things that I watch so much jiu-jitsu. There's very few things that I've never, ever seen before. Like there's variations on things that are new, and there's strategies and new approaches to technique, but there's very few things that's like, oh, I never knew you could do that. Like, so right now, so much of what I try to do is I try to take in what's brought to me and see how I can experiment with that in my game. I know what my game is. I know in the gi, I like to have a very difficult guard to pass. I like to play a lot of lapel guard. I play a lot of half guard. In the stand-up, I like to use a lot of judo. And I don't like to purely wrestle. I like to look for trips and throws in the gi. And on top, I like to smash pass. In no-gi, I play a lot of leg locks. From the bottom, I play a lot of half guard, a lot of Z guard. I play a lot of inversion. On the feet in no-gi, I do like to wrestle a lot more, but I love a good foot sweep, which you would know if if anyone follows my Instagram, you see a lot of foot sweeps. I like to pass with space from no-gi, less pressure passing than I do in the gi. So I'm very aware of like the things that I do well and like the way that my game works, but I'm never trying to like keep it that way. I'm always trying to take in new things and how can I change my game in a way that becomes new and difficult for people to keep up with. And, one of the things I recommend that everyone does, and again, a great tip for a new person, is I record all of my training rounds, not just for the content for the gram, which is great, follow me, but also because I was just talking to my coach about this last night. I go through and I have a training log and I record who I rolled with, what was working for me, what wasn't, and then I go back and I analyze the patterns. And I see that, all right, for the last 6 weeks, I've been tapped, 5 times with this one submission or a version of it. Okay, I don't realize day to day that that's happening, but when I see the pattern, okay, I need to improve that. Or I'm having a lot of success with this one specific pass. Okay, well, let's stop doing that for a little bit so we don't get like reliant on it and we work some other things. So having the ability to like go back and look at all the rounds, keep a training journal and know what's happening and see those patterns, it's such a good way to sort of keep your game from just being, I'm really good at this one thing. I do this one thing over and over. Now I'm really bored of jiu-jitsu because I only do this one thing. Like there's so much that you need to take in and so much evolution that can happen that just makes jiu-jitsu exciting for like the rest of your fucking life.
It is so cool to hear you talk about your game. It's inspiring because at this level where I'm at and I'm staring up at you and it's like beaming a light that I can barely see, but I can see that there's a light where you are. And it just seems, the party just seems so fun at where you're at. And on that note, man, I really appreciate you talking to me. I can't wait to get to maybe meet a semblance of my game and maybe come back on and talk about it and what I've learned, my explorations and
that's
my takeaways.
Well, that was going to be what I was going to say when we were.
Awesome.
I was going to say, like, I'm hoping that as you are training, that I'll start seeing more jiu-jitsu content on your feed, and we can kind of like check your progress. And then next time I'm down in Orlando, we can get some rounds in.
I would love to. Oh my gosh, yeah, yes, and I'm just so lucky to follow a guy like you and be able to have a resource to ask questions to. And
yeah, man, like, and that's why I wanted to do it this way because, I try to put my shoes in. I try to put myself in the shoes of like, a new person. I'd love to make an episode and a video and a podcast about this is what you should know coming in. I haven't been a new person in like a decade and a half, so like having the ability to talk to someone who's just getting started And some of those questions that I'm sure so many other people have when they're just getting started, and be able to sort of work through them, it's super helpful for me for content. So I appreciate you, buddy.
Absolutely, man. Well, on that note, be on the lookout because I've already tapped a purple belt and
By pinching
and
them.
I can't wait for people to see the thumbnail for this because they're gonna think I'm an absolute Brazilian black belt jiu-jitsu killer. But little do they know.
So before you go, just tell everyone about your podcast so that they can check it out too. Because like, I'm not just saying it because you're my buddy, and I texted you guys this after the first one came out. I would listen to this show whether we were buddies or not because it's really good and funny and thought-provoking. So just like, shoot your plug, please.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's a podcast called Another Creative Artist Podcast, the ACA podcast on Spotify and Apple. And what we do is me and my co-hosts, we explore the underpinnings of creativity in different domains and different careers. So whether it's a recording engineer for Cannibal Corpse, or it's a stand-up comedian who's on the road right now, or we have coming up within the next week, a stunt guy in Hollywood who's doubled seems like everyone at this point. And what we do is we just get under the hood. We want to find out how the sausage was made and you know, the ups and downs of the craft. And yeah, tune in. It's a lot of fun and I'm learning a lot. And there's so many parallels in people's worlds that we don't even know about. It's insane. So give us a listen.
Well, that's why I like the show, because you guys do get deep on some stuff without it being like, man, this is a heavy listen. Like I think saying the word, like, you guys keep it light, I think that's like reductive a little bit. Like, it's not keeping it light. It's just managing to, like you said, get under the hood and go deep on some stuff and have it be entertaining where it's like thought provoking, but I'm not like emotionally drained after having listened to it. Like, it's still fun to listen to and hear these people in these different, like these different mediums that what is it like to be a stand-up comedian? Like, I don't want to hear a guy doing bits on a talk show about it. Like, I want to hear him actually talking about, like, producing the bits. And, like, so, yeah, highly recommend. But I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks so much, dude.
Thanks, brother.
Big thank you to Andrew Romano for coming on the show. I know it's a little bit different to talk to someone who's brand new at jiu-jitsu and not someone who's an expert in jiu-jitsu, but I hope this helped, especially if you're considering training jiu-jitsu and you have questions about how to get started. I have a lot more in the works for you, so please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and I will see you all in the next one.